a cinematic look at the man who built an empire on laughter and lost it in silence. He was once known as America's dad, a figure who seemed to transcend generations, race, and even comedy itself. From humble beginnings to becoming one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world, Bill Cosby built an empire rooted in laughter and legacy. But behind the sweatered charm and paternal wisdom, a more complex and now deeply controversial reality emerged. So how did Bill Cosby go from cultural icon to cautionary tale, and what remains of the life he built? Current lifestyle. As of 2025, Bill Cosby lives in near total seclusion in his sprawling estate in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, a once bustling 8,940 square foot mansion that now feels more like a monument than a home. Purchased in the 1980s at the height of his fame, the Tudor-style residence was once the hub of family gatherings, elite parties, and the quiet luxury that defined Cosby's public image. The gated property includes 7 bedrooms, 8 baths, a sweeping private library, and lush manicured gardens that encircle a stone terrace. Spaces once designed for hosting, now used for retreat. Inside, the home is filled with reminders of a different era: African-American art collections, signed scripts from The Cosby Show, and a grand piano that hasn't been played in years. Every corner echoes with the past, a past Cosby can't return to. He rarely leaves the grounds. Public sightings are almost non-existent. His circle has shrunk dramatically, and even among former friends, many ties have quietly faded. Still, those close to him say he adheres to a strict daily routine: early mornings with classical music, long hours in the study, and evenings spent in reflection, watching old westerns or listening to jazz. The luxury remains, but the man inside lives a drastically different life than the one America once knew. It's no longer a mansion filled with laughter, said one anonymous source. It's a quiet place for someone who once had the world watching: cars and luxury possessions. At the peak of his influence, Bill Cosby's car collection reflected not just wealth, but a deliberate embrace of timeless craftsmanship and subtle power. While some celebrities flaunted flash, Cosby curated class. One of his most cherished vehicles was a 1965 Shelby Cobra 427, a rare American sports car known for its brutal speed and collector status. With over 500 horsepower under the hood, the Cobra wasn't just a car, it was a statement. It symbolized Cosby's taste for exclusivity and his affinity for American legacy. In fact, he was among the few entertainers to receive one directly from Carroll Shelby himself, an honor reserved for the elite. But Cosby's relationship with cars wasn't just about adrenaline. He also owned a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud II, with a custom cream leather interior and a walnut dashboard. It wasn't just a ride, it was an extension of his carefully manicured image: regal, dignified, and untouched by scandal, at least at the time. A more sentimental choice was his Mercedes-Benz 300 SEL 6.3, a sleeper sedan that combined raw performance with luxury. Often seen driving it through the quiet Pennsylvania suburbs, Cosby treated the car less like a showpiece and more like a trusted companion. Beyond the cars, his estate housed rare African-American artwork, including original pieces by Romare Bearden and Henry Ossawa Tanner. These weren't investments, they were heritage. Cosby often spoke of his collection as a museum of our people, once offering private tours to students and cultural institutions. And in a private music room, a custom Steinway grand piano gifted to him during the height of his Carnegie Hall performances. Its keys have been silent for years, but they once carried melodies that defined a generation. Each possession once told a story about power, pride, and Black excellence. Now they sit in silence, frozen in a legacy that's still being reckoned with. Net worth plus income sources. At his financial peak in the early 2000s, Bill Cosby's net worth was estimated at over $400 million, placing him among the wealthiest entertainers in American history. It wasn't just TV money, it was a multi-pronged empire built on charisma, brand trust, and business acumen. A significant portion came from The Cosby Show, which wasn't just a hit, it was a syndication juggernaut. During its run, and in the years that followed, the show generated over $1.5 billion in revenue, with Cosby himself reportedly earning upwards of $1 million per episode in later seasons. His stake in the show's ownership ensured residuals long after the final curtain closed. But that was only the beginning. Cosby was one of the earliest black entertainers to truly own his image. He leveraged it to command major endorsement deals, most famously with Jell-O, where he served as a brand ambassador for over 25 years. That partnership alone earned him tens of millions and turned Jell-O pudding pops into a cultural punchline, one that came with real financial bite. He also profited heavily from stand-up comedy tours, filling concert halls well into his 70s. These shows, often billed as An Evening with Bill Cosby, were both critically acclaimed and financially lucrative, bringing in millions per year at their peak. Cosby was a prolific author, penning more than a dozen books, including bestsellers like Fatherhood and Love and Marriage. These works, often drawn from his comedic monologues, became staples in American households, earning royalties and reinforcing his public persona as a wise, funny, moral father figure. Less visible, but just as impactful were his investments: real estate, art, and private ventures. He quietly owned significant property holdings in New York, Massachusetts, and California, including rental properties and commercial real estate. He also collected African American art, some of which has been valued in the tens of millions. Cosby donated more than $20 million to historically black colleges, particularly Spelman College, which received what was then the largest individual donation in its history. It was philanthropy, but it also positioned Cosby as a pillar of black leadership, further insulating his empire with goodwill. However, following the public fallout from his legal controversies, many of those income streams dried up. Syndication deals were pulled, endorsements vanished, book deals stopped. His estimated net worth today has reportedly dropped to around $400 million, though much of that remains tied up in assets no longer easily liquid or celebrated. He built a kingdom from laughter, trust, and generational storytelling, but when the foundation cracked, so did the fortune. And now the question isn't what he earned, but what remains. Early life. Before the mansions and millions, before the father figure fame and fall from grace, Bill Cosby was a boy from North Philadelphia, raised in a working-class world defined by struggle, pride, and survival. Born William Henry Cosby Jr. on July 12, 1937, he grew up in the Richard Allen Homes, one of the first housing projects built for African Americans in Philadelphia. His mother, Anna, worked as a maid. His father, William Sr., was a Navy mess steward who often vanished for long stretches, leaving young Bill to shoulder the emotional weight of being the man of the house. He was the class clown long before he had a mic in hand. At Mary Channing Wister Public School, he developed a reputation for impersonations and quick wit, a coping mechanism as much as a gift. Teachers noted his intelligence, but also his lack of focus. Cosby later admitted he was more interested in getting laughs than good grades. He faced poverty, racial bias, and academic failure, but behind the mischief was a sensitive, observant child who soaked up stories, language, and people's patterns. He once said his first real stage was the front stoop, where he'd mimic neighbors and keep the kids entertained while their parents worked. Church played a quiet but foundational role. Though not raised devout, the black church community in his neighborhood instilled in him a sense of cadence, performance, and morality that would echo through his stand-up routines and scripted characters for decades. Cosby attended Philadelphia's Germantown High School but left without a diploma. He joined the U.S. Navy at age 19, serving as a hospital corpsman, treating Korean War casualties, and earning his high school equivalency diploma while enlisted. It was in the Navy that his discipline sharpened. He began taking correspondence courses, discovering a new hunger for education. When he left the military, he enrolled at Temple University, initially on an athletic scholarship for track and field. It was there he found his way onto a stage, first casually, then professionally. From a childhood shaped by hardship to a worldview honed by humor, Cosby's early life didn't predict stardom, but it created the emotional language he would later use to shape a generation. Career launch. Bill Cosby's path to stardom wasn't forged in a spotlight, but in the back rooms of smoky jazz clubs where storytelling was currency and timing was everything. While attending Temple University, Cosby worked various odd jobs to stay afloat, bartending among them. It was behind the bar that his natural charisma turned into an unofficial performance. Customers came for the drinks, but they stayed for the stories. Word spread. Encouraged by friends, he took the leap. Open mic night at a local Philadelphia club. The year was 1961. He didn't sing, he didn't dance, he just talked about growing up poor, about his mother's grocery budgeting skills, about childhood games turned epic sagas. But the way he talked, it was clean, clever, and universal, weaving everyday moments into comedy gold. No profanity. No punchlines about race or trauma. Just life, seen through a gifted observer's eyes. His first break came at the legendary Gaslight Cafe in New York City, a Greenwich Village hub for poets and comics. Soon after, he was invited onto The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, a rite of passage for any aspiring comedian. Carson was floored. So were the viewers. By 1964, Cosby had released his first comedy album, Bill Cosby is a Very Funny Fellow, Right?, which earned him national attention. His relaxed, story-driven style, so different from the aggressive punchline comics of the era, carved out a new lane. That album would earn a Grammy, the first of many. But perhaps the most unexpected turn came in 1965, when he was cast as Alexander Scott in the NBC espionage drama I Spy. He wasn't just comic relief, he was a lead. And not just any lead. The first black actor in history to star in a dramatic TV series in a role that wasn't stereotypical or subservient. He played a suave, intelligent secret agent. America took notice. The performance earned him 3 consecutive Emmy Awards, defying every expectation. Cosby didn't knock on the door of mainstream Hollywood, he rewrote the entrance. With humor, intellect, and timing, he became not just a comedian, but a cultural disruptor. Breakout success. By the time The Cosby Show debuted on NBC in 1984, Bill Cosby had already conquered stand-up, charted Grammy-winning comedy albums, and broken barriers in dramatic television. But what came next wasn't just success. It was a cultural shift dressed in a cozy family sitcom. Cosby didn't just star in The Cosby Show, he created it, shaped it, and defended it. As Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable, a witty Brooklyn obstetrician and loving father of 5, he projected an image of black excellence rarely seen on television. His wife, Claire Huxtable, played by Felicia Rashad, was a fierce and fashionable attorney. Their kids had opinions, style, and teenage angst. Their brownstone was warm, lived in, full of jazz and sweaters and parental eye rolls. At its peak, The Cosby Show reached over 30 million weekly viewers. It topped the Nielsen ratings for 5 straight seasons, a feat few shows in television history have matched. But it wasn't just about ratings, it was about representation. Cosby insisted on nuance, no stereotypes, no lazy writing. He brought in real educators to consult on scripts. He made sure the artwork on the Huxtable walls was by actual black artists. He demanded that every episode, even the funniest ones, carried dignity and depth. The show's success spilled beyond the small screen. It revived NBC's fortunes, reshaped advertising around family viewing, and opened the door for a wave of new black-led sitcoms. Behind the scenes, Cosby earned upwards of $1 million per episode by the end of the show's run, including back-end profits and syndication rights. Cosby followed up with A Different World, a spin-off centered around historically black colleges, and made millions more through Fat Albert, his educational cartoon franchise. He became America's Dad, a title that transcended comedy and tethered him deeply to the national imagination. But even in the glow of universal fame, there were fractures. Some critics questioned whether The Cosby Show portrayed too perfect a version of black family life, whether it sidestepped the harsher realities of race in America. Cosby's own public persona, strict on respectability, began to feel at odds with the rising voices of hip-hop and cultural activism. And yet, for nearly a decade, Bill Cosby was untouchable. His name alone could greenlight a show, sell out an arena, or make headlines in boardrooms, a blend of charisma and control, genius and gravity, legacy and current impact. For decades, Bill Cosby was more than just a comedian. He was a cultural architect, a man who reshaped how America saw black fatherhood, black intellect, and black identity. His influence reached from living rooms to lecture halls, from Saturday morning cartoons to Ivy League endowments. At the height of his power, Cosby wasn't just a TV star. He was a moral voice. He gave commencement addresses, funded scholarships, and donated tens of millions to historically black colleges and universities, most notably $20 million to Spelman College, the single largest individual donation in HBCU history at the time. Institutions named buildings after him. Networks aired his specials every holiday season. Generations of families, black, white, and everything in between, referred to him as America's dad. But legacy is a complicated thing. In the 2000s and 2010s, decades-old sexual assault allegations resurfaced. What began as whispers grew into a national reckoning. More than 60 women came forward, sharing eerily similar accounts. In 2018, Cosby was convicted and sentenced to prison, though his conviction was later overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 2021 on procedural grounds, a decision that reignited fierce debate. What does legacy mean when the man and the myth fracture so painfully apart? For some, Cosby's fall invalidates all that came before it. For others, his body of work, Fat Albert, The Cosby Show, A Different World, remains foundational to how black creativity entered the mainstream. Many young creators, from Kenya Barris to Issa Rae, cite the Huxtables as early blueprints, but they do so with caution, acknowledging the tension between Cosby's contributions and the harm his accusers describe. Today, Bill Cosby lives in relative seclusion in Pennsylvania. At 87, he rarely speaks publicly, save for brief statements through his legal team. He's no longer on Hollywood's speed dial. His name has been removed from many institutions. His shows, once syndication gold, are largely absent from airwaves, and yet the ripple effects of his influence, the debates he sparked, the doors he helped open, and the conversations his downfall demanded, still echo through culture, through comedy, and through the difficult reckoning between genius and justice. Bill Cosby's legacy is a case study in brilliance and brokenness. He revolutionized the small screen, brought black fatherhood into prime time, and helped finance a generation of black education and art. But he also became a symbol of something much darker, a cautionary tale about power, silence, and consequence. For some, Cosby will always be Dr. Huxtable, the loving father in a brownstone, dishing out wisdom and jazz records. For others, his legacy is inseparable from the accusations that shattered trust and rewrote public memory. And so we're left with a complicated truth, that greatness and failure can live in the same body, that culture can be shaped by people who themselves are deeply flawed. What we choose to remember and what we choose to hold accountable says as much about us as it does about them. In the end, Bill Cosby's story isn't just about a man, it's about a country still learning how to reconcile its heroes.